Hello, and welcome to a new series called Changing Tracks, where we delve into the history of railways and how the layouts have changed. Today, we're going to be looking at the Cross City line that runs from Lichfield in the north to Bromsgrove and Redditch in the south, via Birmingham. Cross City line services started in 1978. However, the railways were built as long ago as 180 years ago. The first section of railway was from Vauxhall, now called Duddeston, and Aston, on what was the Grand Junction Railway, which continued as far as the Liverpool-Manchester Railway via Wolverhampton, Stafford and Crewe. This section of line was opened in 1837. The following year, this stretch of line was extended to Birmingham Curzon Street to share a station with the London and Birmingham Railway. In 1840, the Birmingham and Gloucester Railway was opened from Curzon Street to Gloucester via what is now called the Camp Hill Line. In 1854, the line was extended deeper into Birmingham with a new station called New Street. The next section was a single-line branch of the Birmingham and Gloucester line from Barnt Green to Redditch, opened by the Midland Railway in 1859, which itself would continue south, opening in stages via Evesham as the Gloucester Loop Line. Back to the north, the next section built was from Aston to a terminus at Sutton Coldfield, opening in 1862. The Birmingham West Suburban Railway followed in 1876, running from the Camp Hill line at Kings Norton to its original terminus in Granville Street. Sutton Coldfield became a through station in 1884 when the line was extended to join the South Staffordshire line at Lichfield. In 1885, the final section was opened when the Birmingham West Suburban Railway was extended into Birmingham New Street, with the terminus at Granville Street closing at the same time to passengers. Now for years, there were no through trains as we have today, mainly because the section north was run by the London and North Western Railway, whereas the southern section was under the auspices of the Midland Railway. This continued even after the grouping of the railways in 1921 to form the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. There was also a difference to how services were run on the two halves. The north seen regular services to Sutton Coldfield and Lichfield, with steam being replaced by diesel multiple units in 1956. To the south, however, services were run down with closure proposed under the infamous Beeching Act, with all stations to Redditch in 1964 proposed for closure. These plans were reprieved in the mid to late 1960s, but services were cut to a few peak time trains. The early 1970s saw the West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive gain responsibility for managing and planning the local railway network around the West Midlands, looking into the possibility of cross-city services in 1972. By 1975, the project was sanctioned and services were launched in 1978 at a cost of £7.4 million or £78.4 million in 2023. This project involved reopening Five-Way Station, which closed in 1944 as an economy measure in the Second World War. New stations at the University of Birmingham and Longbridge, the rebuilding of other stations, and services running right the way through from north to south, freeing up space at New Street from terminating trains. Initial services ran from Longbridge to Four Oaks, just north of Sutton Coldfield at 15-minute intervals, with one train per hour running to Lichfield City. Services were extended south, with an hourly service to Redditch in 1980, increasing to half-hourly in 1989. Services to Lichfield City were increased to half-hourly in 1986, with some services extended to the reopened high-level platforms at Lichfield Trent Valley from November 1988. The next big change for the Cross City line came in the 1990s, after the elderly diesel multiple units were becoming increasingly unreliable. The West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive started pressing for electrification of the line, and the decision to electrify the line was made in February 1990, with work starting in May that year. Electrification was completed by 1993, which coincided with the introduction of brand new Class 3-3 electric multiple units. These had quite a few teething problems to begin with, resulting in some elderly Class 304, 308 and 310 EMUs and some of the original DMUs to be drafted in to run the service. Electrification cost £64.5 million or around £165.9 million in 2023. Teething problems over, the next alteration was at Alf Church in 2014, with the passing loop added so services could be increased from 2 trains per hour to 3 trains per hour. And finally, Bromsgrove Station was rebuilt to the south with 4 platforms instead of 2 in 2016, with the section from Barnes Green being electrified in 2018. So grab a helmet, hop on, and let's go explore. We start here at Lichfield Trent Valley, which opened in 1871, replacing 2 previous separate stations. The high-level platforms were closed in 1965 when services between Burton-on-Trent and Lichfield City were withdrawn. Both platforms were reopened in 1988, with trains terminating their service at the northbound platform and continuing empty north to cross over to the southbound track before heading back south to pick up at the other platform. This arrangement continued until electrification was completed here in 1992, when a new train crossover was added to the south of the station, an arrangement which continues to this day. The southbound platform was demolished soon after. However, in 2023, the supports for the remaining high-level platform were found to be deteriorating badly. The platform was closed in July 2023, and a section of the West Coast Main Line was demolished. The missing piece of bridge was finally reinstated in December of the same year. There are plans to reopen the line north of here for regular passenger services. The line is still open for freight traffic and the odd cross-country diversion when the line via Tamworth is closed. Now we come to Lichfield City. This is the second station built for the centre of Lichfield, the original being built in 1849 just northeast of here for the South Staffordshire Railway. With the new line from Birmingham, a new station was built in 1884. As you can tell, there used to be a considerable amount of lines through this section, which have been reduced to 2 through lines and some sidings. You may also note the signals have a junction indicator for the diverging route. The station was the junction for the line which used to go through Walsall and Dudley towards Stourbridge. The line closed to regular passenger services in 1965, but saw use as a freight line and occasional diversions. The line was closed in 1984 between Walsall and an oil depot near Hammerwich, with the remaining sections seeing the odd train until 2001 to 2002. The line is largely intact but overgrown, and there are plans to reopen it in the future in one form or another, making this station a junction once again. Just outside Lichfield City, you'll find this bridge, which at one stage was the second most frequently hit bridge in the whole of the UK, which means that it also has to be one of the strongest bridges in the whole of the UK. Shenstone was opened in 1884 and used to have a goods yard until 1964, located a short distance to the south. An oddity of this station is that the station building is located on platform 2, whereas normally you'd find it on platform 1. Just to the north of Shenstone, you'll find the Shenstone Viaduct, and as you can tell, it's about the same height as Peter Crouch. In 2009, the line was closed while they improved waterproofing and load distribution on this viaduct, and amazingly, the works were completed 6 hours ahead of schedule, a very rare achievement. Butler's Lane is a very latecomer in the line's history, only opening in 1957, serving the northern parts of the Four Oaks district of Sutton Coldfield. It was originally built as a temporary wooden station called Butler's Lane Halt, even though it was staffed. It was rebuilt as a permanent station during electrification in 1992. Four Oaks is just to the north of Sutton Coldfield and was opened in 1884. The station is a little different than the other stations in that it has 3 platforms: Platform 1 for northbound through trains, Platform 2 for southbound through trains, and a terminating Platform 3. There used to be some sidings just to the east, which have been obliterated and replaced with some flats. In 1978, this was the terminus of most cross-city services, with only a few trains continuing north to Lichfield City until the 1980s. These days, services don't terminate on Sundays. Now we come to the royal town of Sutton Coldfield, which used to be the terminus of the line when it opened in 1862. When the line was extended to Lichfield, the station was resited just to the east, leaving the original station as the goods yard. Immediately to the north is the tunnel where the line continues north and was the scene of a terrible train crash in 1955. An express from York to Bristol was on diversion from its main route via Tamworth. The train was driven by a relief driver who supposedly knew the diversion route. Unfortunately, he took the curve into the station at nearly double the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. The train derailed, hitting the platform and causing severe damage to the station. The first carriage was crushed between the second, and the engine and carriage 4 was launched into the air, damaging the station roof. 17 people, including the train crew, were killed and 25 more were injured. Trains were running again in 3 days after the accident, so I can't imagine the view out the window passing through was too pleasant. Sutton Coldfield was also the location of the motor rail terminal for the Birmingham area, opening in the mid-1960s but only lasting until 1972. From here, you could load your car onto the train and be whisked away overnight to Stirling in Scotland or Newton Abbot in the southwest. Gravelly Hill was also opened with the line in 1862. Originally with shorter platforms which were extended sometime between opening of the line and the early 1900s. This station has an unusual feature where the main station building is a two-storey affair, with the booking office being upstairs. In the 1990s electrification, the wooden footbridge and other buildings were replaced. After threading its way through Spaghetti Junction, the line joins the Grand Junction Railway here at Aston, which opened in 1854. The station became a junction in 1862 when the line to Sutton Coldfield was added. This section of line was built on a large curve avoiding Aston Hall, which itself was built in 1618. The actual wording forbade the railway company from entering upon or into, take, injure, or damage, for the purposes of this Act, any part of a certain park lying within the parish of Aston juxta Birmingham in the county of Warwick, and Handsworth in the county of Stafford, known by the name of Aston Park. Or in other words, in 1880, a new line was built from here to Stechford, which carried the Wolverhampton portion of London to Birmingham express trains. In the same year, the line to Windsor Street Goods Depot was opened, which remained until the 1980s. In 1883, the Aston locomotive shed was opened in the armpit of the line to Duddeston and Stechford, and the line beyond was quadrupled in 1891 to Duddeston. In 1906, they discovered an issue with the original brick arch viaduct at the station, namely that at Lichfield Road only single-decker trams could pass underneath, so the section over the road was replaced with a steel bridge allowing for double-decker trams to safely pass under. The station and all lines except the Lichfield branch were electrified in the mid-1960s, with both signal boxes closed, all semaphore signals replaced with multi-aspect colour signals, and control passed to the power signal box in Birmingham. On another note, if you want to go watch Aston Villa at their home ground, you also have Witton Station, which is located nearby. Duddeston was built as the temporary terminus of the Grand Junction Railway from Liverpool via Stafford in 1837. Originally named Vauxhall, the following year the line was extended to Curzon Street alongside the line to London. In 1869, the station was rebuilt to the north. The station was renamed Vauxhall and Duddeston in 1889, and during quadrupling, the station was moved back to the south side of Duddeston Mill Road. In 1941, during the Second World War, the station would be bombed in a nighttime raid and destroyed. It would be rebuilt in a temporary fashion only to be damaged again in a fire in the 1950s, before being rebuilt again. In 1974, the station would take on its name of Duddeston, with the words Vauxhall and being erased forever. To the west of the station are goods sheds, now out of use and boarded up to prevent trespassing. The station features 2 island platforms, however only the east island is used, with the west one being abandoned. Curzon Street Station was opened as a joint terminus going by the name of Birmingham for the London and Birmingham Railway and the Grand Junction Railway in 1838. The station was renamed Birmingham Curzon Street in November 1852 and closed to passengers 2 years later when the line to New Street was opened. The station reopened for excursion trains in April 1874, and 19 years later the excursion trains stopped. The station remained open for goods trains until the mid-1960s. The original plan for the station was for it to be a through station with the line passing under the grounds of Aston Hall, which of course never happened. The site was in use until 2006 as a parcel force depot. These days, works is underway to build the high-speed 2 station, utilising the original station building and the foundation for an old turntable. The line from Aston joins the West Coast Main Line Birmingham Loop at Proof House Junction. For years, it joined up with the original London North Western Railway lines, which are the 2 tracks to the northern part of New Street Station. However, when cross-city line services started, this would cause conflicts as the trains would then have to cross over onto the original Midland Railway tracks. In 2002, they had a solution. Rearranged the junctions so the trains go directly onto the 2 tracks to the south. The planning took a couple of years, including making sure that any trains for Birmingham from the east were routed on alternative railways to reach Birmingham from the west. After thousands of man-hours and loads of planning, the junction was closed for works to be carried out, only for engineers to snip the wrong wires for signalling in the local area, causing absolute mayhem for trains on the diversion route. Works were eventually finished and trains have been running sort of alright ever since. New Street Station was formally opened in 1854, but had been used in its uncompleted form for 2 years prior by the Star Valley Railway from Wolverhampton. At the time, it had the largest single-spanned arched roof in the world. The original plan was for 3 spans, but they discovered that the columns would restrict the workings for the railway, so they went for a massive single span instead. 14 years later, it was no longer the largest single-span roof, losing to St Pancras Station in London. The original station was shared with the Midland Railway. However, trains from the north travelling south, calling at New Street, had to reverse to reach the Camp Hill line. With space at a premium, the Midland Railway opened their own station in 1885, immediately south of the London North Western Railway Station. At the same time, the Birmingham West Suburban Railway was extended to Birmingham New Street, meaning Midland Railway services no longer had to reverse. In the middle of the 2 stations was Queen's Drive, which had a footbridge over the road to connect the 2 stations. However, the whole station was rebuilt to combine both halves into one whole, in the process erasing Queen's Drive from the map forever and ever. The rebuild happened at the same time as electrification of the railways in the area between 1964 and 1967. 8 through platforms and 6 bays were replaced with 12 through platforms, and the whole thing was covered with a 7-acre ugly box. The project cost £4.5 million, or £103 million in today's money. By the year 2000, the station had become overcrowded and unpopular with passengers. The station was designed for 650 trains per day and 60,000 passengers, but was handling double that amount. So the station was redeveloped from 2010 to 2015. The ugly box with narrow corridors was replaced by a light and airy concourse with loads more room to navigate around people standing in the middle of the floor. The station was the scene of an accident when a train from Bristol ran a red light and ploughed into the back of a train for Derby, killing 3 people and injuring 24. The locomotive of the Derby train had just coupled up to the carriages and the guard's van telescoped during the crash. Now off to Five Ways. Five Ways Station was opened in 1885 by the Midland Railway. It would close again in 1944 as a wartime measure and would not reopen again until 1978 when cross-city services began. Just to the south was a connection to Birmingham Central Goods Station, which closed in the late 1960s. Originally, the line to the goods station went as far as Granville Street until the Birmingham West Suburban Railway was extended to New Street, and Granville Street was closed. Due to its short life, there are no pictures of Granville Street Station. All we know is that it had 1 platform, wooden buildings, and a runaround loop. University Station is a relative newcomer, having only opened in 1978, and was the only station built specifically to serve a university. The original platforms were quite narrow and overcrowding was becoming a problem, so in 2019, works began on widening the platforms and a new station building was built. The rebuilding works cost £56 million. The widening of the platforms were completed in time for the 2022 Commonwealth Games, and the rebuilt station building was completed in January 2014. The station also sees some cross-country services call here and is the busiest station without a direct service to London. Selly Oak Station opened with the line in 1876. The line was originally built as a single track, however when the railway was extended into New Street, the line was doubled. However, the original bridge over the canal and Bristol Road couldn't be widened, so the railway was realigned. Unfortunately, there seems to be no trace of the original alignment of the railway. The station is pretty basic now, with just 2 lines and 2 platforms. However, there were also goods facilities on both sides of the railway with the station in the middle. The sidings are long gone and replaced with car parking. Bourneville Station was built in 1876 as the original southern terminus of the Birmingham West Suburban Railway, whilst it struggled to build a junction with the Birmingham and Gloucester Railway at Kings Norton. Originally called Sturchley Street, the words "and Bourneville" were added in 1880, a year after the Cadbury factory was opened. Originally, when the line was single-tracked, there was only need for 1 platform with a runaround loop. However, due to its close proximity to the canal, when the line was doubled, they could only build a narrow southbound platform. an issue which remains to this day. In 1904, the name was changed to Bourneville. One quirk of the station is that the station is partially painted in Cadbury purple, and the signs also contain the Cadbury logo. And just look at this platform. It's barely wider than a Crunchy bar. Speaking of which... Right, moving on. Kings Norton opened in 1849 with the Camp Hill line and became a junction in 1885. The line was quadrupled in the mid-1920s with additional platforms as well. Stations on the Camp Hill line were closed in 1941, however the line continues to see passenger trains as well as seeing frequent freight traffic. These days only the outer platforms are used with the inner platform sitting derelict. There are discussions about reopening Platform 2, however, to allow 6 trains per hour on the cross-city line service without clashing with passing trains. The next station south is Northfield. Opening in 1870, the line was quadrupled in 1892 with only the inner tracks having platform access. In 1913, the station was subject to an arson attack by suffragettes, but little damage was done. The station was slated for closure in the Beeching Report in 1963, along with the line to Redditch. The route and the station was reprieved in 1965, but will receive a much reduced service of 4 trains per day each way to New Street. This arrangement remained until 1978, when cross-city services started. 2 new platforms were built for the outer slow lines, leaving the island platforms derelict for all eternity. The current Longbridge station was opened in 1978 for cross-city services, and was the terminus point with all trains using a turn-back facility just to the south. The original station was a little further south, opening in 1840 to 1841. It wouldn't last long, closing in 1849. There was another station of the same name on the Hales Owen line, which was served only by workman trains for the Longbridge factory from 1915 to 1964. In 1980, Longbridge was no longer the terminus when some trains were extended to Redditch. When Redditch was the main terminating point for cross-city services, some trains continued to terminate here. Barnt Green sits on the junction of the main line to Gloucester and the branch line to Redditch. The line through the site was opened in 1841, but the area didn't receive a station until 1844. The station became a junction in 1859 when the branch line was opened to Redditch. The station had an unusual layout initially. The branch line had 1 platform until 1894, when the first 350 yards of the branch was doubled. The branch line had its 2 platforms together, however on the main line the platforms were staggered with the northbound platform being just north of the junction. So in 1928 the station was rebuilt with the northbound platform being moved to the south of the junction. Another feature of this station is that it lies a couple of miles from the top of the famous Licky Incline, a grueling 2-mile climb of 1 in 38. Steep enough that to this day some trains still need banking. This was one of the reasons for the loop line via Redditch and Evesham, for heavier trains to avoid the incline as well as local passenger traffic. The line past Redditch was closed to passengers in 1962 and to freight 2 years later. The whole line to Redditch was slated for closure in 1963, including Barnt Green Station by Dr. Beeching. However, the line was reprieved in 1965, but was left with only 4 trains per day during peak times, no Sunday service, and no trains stopping on the main line. The service was eventually boosted in 1980 with an hourly service to Redditch, being boosted to half-hourly in 1989 and electrification in 1992. It wouldn't be until 2018 when services resumed calling at the mainline platforms when the main line was electrified to Bromsgrove. During the Second Worldwide kerfuffle, a local correspondent would remark about standing on the main line northbound platform with his sister, seeing ambulance trains passing through. Some of them carrying American troops who would throw sweets and coins which would bounce down the platform. The sound of the steam locomotives puffing their way up the incline with the hollow bark of the exhaust. I guess you could say he was well chuffed. Oh, sorry. Didn't think it was that bad. I'm going to go to Alf Church. Alf Church Station was opened in 1859 with the rest of the line to Redditch and has had 1 platform for most of its life. During electrification, the platform was moved slightly north adjoining the old platform. In order for trains to be increased from 2 trains per hour to 3 trains per hour, a new platform and passing loop was added in 2014. The work started in November 2013 to clear the necessary land for the new passing loop and platform, and the line was closed for 2 months in the summer of 2014 for the tracks and overhead wires to be erected. The improved service began in December of that year, meaning for the first time ever, Redditch had 3 trains per hour. Redditch was, then wasn't, and now is the terminus of the branch line from Barnt Green, and has been relocated a few times. The original station was located in the area of Clive Road, one source saying the site became a coal yard and later a car showroom with filling station, which would put the station right about here. With the opening of the line south to Evesham, the station was relocated to a site which today is the bus station. The station being different in that it had 2 platforms instead of 1 and was opened in 1868. This station would be in use for over 100 years until 1972, when the station was relocated to the north of Bromsgrove Road and the old site being redeveloped into a bus station and shopping mall. Trains still pass through the site of the new station to reach the old until services transferred. The new station initially had an island platform with 2 tracks, lasting until 1993, when the platform was expanded in width and length to accommodate 6-car trains. To the east of the station is the former goods yard, which is now the car park for the new station. The bridge which carries Bromsgrove Road over the railway still exists as a subway for pedestrians to walk from the shopping centre and bus station to the train station, avoiding the stupidity that often comes with crossing the road by foot. And finally, we come to our other southern terminus of the cross-city line, Bromsgrove, which lies at the foot of the Licky Incline. This station was originally built in 1840 as part of the Birmingham and Gloucester Railway. It would remain largely unchanged until 1969, when, for reasons unknown to those with more than 2 brain cells, the southbound platform was closed, meaning any southbound train stopping at Bromsgrove would have to cross over onto the up line to serve the station and get in the way of northbound trains. This lack of intelligence was rectified in May 1990, when a new platform was built on the southbound side. In 2007, there were plans to build a new station just to the south with 4 platforms and would allow 6-car trains to call at the station. However, in 2009, the plans were still in the procrastination phase and funding froze in the following year. Eventually, the green signal was given for work to start in 2014, with the planned opening date of May 2015. Delays postponed the opening to November 2015. Eventually, the new station opened in July 2016, with initially just 2 platforms in use and a turnback platform. The old station was demolished in November 2016 during track remodelling. The next phase of remodelling involved electrification of the line from Barnt Green, which required the rebuilding of 4 overbridges. At the same time, re-signalling work and track relaying took place over 12 days, with services diverted via Kidderminster or rail replacement buses between Droitwich and Longbridge. Electric services started in July 2018, with electric trains running all the way through to Lichfield, as well as seeing an hourly service to Hereford using diesel multiple units. The people of Bromsgrove, however, are not too happy. In July 2018, Cross Country decided to stop their trains calling at Bromsgrove, saying the stop wasn't needed now Bromsgrove has electric trains to Birmingham. So anyone wanting to head south to Bristol has to either get a train to Worcester and change, taking 2 hours, or head 15 miles in the wrong direction and spend ages trying to find the right platform at Birmingham New Street and then pass the same station you started at. The station has had a few accidents in its history, namely some boiler explosions, a rear-end collision and someone being hit by a train while carrying parcels across the line. The most recent incident happened in March 2020 when the driver of a Class 66 locomotive failed to stop before hitting the buffers at the end of a siding just to the south of the station. The locomotive fouling the main line and subsequently being hit by a Class 170 DMU. Thankfully there were no injuries, but the locomotive driver was found to have been playing with his phone during his journey and immediately before the accident. The driver was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment, suspended for 18 months, had to complete 120 hours of unpaid work and pay over £3,000 in compensation to the other driver and court costs. Ironically, the locomotive involved was also involved in a derailment at Doncaster in 2014 and another derailment just north of Lichfield in July 2005. And there we have it. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, have a lekker day.